Hello and welcome to today's Rocksmith Developer Stream. I'm your host and the community developer on Rocksmith, Doug Liddy. Welcome and thank you very much for being here today. Before we get into it, I just want to go ahead and acknowledge the fact that right now Rocksmith Remastered is not able to connect. It is having server issues on all platforms. If you're on Steam, at least, if you're on PC or Mac, you should be able to play in offline mode. Some consoles may be able to be played if you are going offline. There should be a link posted in the chat. Today we have Yubi Yubble. That's Josh. He's covering for UB Jurassic today. So he'll be taking our questions and he'll be moderating with us. But he should have a link in chat to let you know where you can look out for updates. You can also check us on our Twitter at Rocksmith Game on Twitter for updates about this issue. We do have a team investigating it. We're looking to get it fixed as soon as possible. We apologize and we thank you for your patience in the interim. No, it's a pain. We're going to get it fixed as soon as we are able. So that out of the way, I want to say welcome. Thanks for being here. As always, we're going to take a look at some music, some performances. This week, Dan and I sort of collaborated on a couple of tunes that we're going to have later on the stream. Sam Schwartz recorded some information, some tips about bends on your guitar, and our guest for discussion today. Over the past few months, we've spoken with a number of professional musicians or other people with music-related professions. Some of those have been primarily performers or educators, people in production roles. We've even had some venue owners and educators. All of this has been in an effort to show the sort of breadth of options that a musician can have professionally, or even a very serious hobbyist musician might be able to get into. And today, I'm very excited to welcome Ubisoft San Francisco's own Nick Bonardi, who some of our long-term viewers may recognize from the olden days. Nick Bonardi, welcome.
Hey,
how you doing?
Going?
Going really well, except for that thing that I mentioned just now about the connectivity issues.
Yeah, that's a thing to mention. Yeah.
Yeah. That aside, swimmingly. Great to have you here. So for the people in our chat right now, who, by the way, if you have questions for myself or for Nick at any point in the chat, please tag Yubi Yubble to let us know, and we'll get those questions to us, and we can answer some of those later on in this discussion. But Nick, I want to let everybody know here kind of what it is that you do in Ubisoft San Francisco.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so my name's Nicholas Bonardi. I'm the audio director here at Ubisoft San Francisco, and I was on the core team that created the first Rocksmith and the second Rocksmith 2014. I actually was a part of the small startup called Game Tank that only had 3 people in it that made the demo called Guitar Rising that was eventually bought by Ubisoft but turned into Rocksmith proper. So I've been here for a long time.
Yeah.
It's been great, yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Do you want me to talk about like how I got into it in the first place?
Please, yeah.
It's a weird story, right?
I'll sit back. It's all you.
Yeah, basically, like right out of high school, like I was really focused on music. You know, I knew it was something that I wanted to do. I didn't quite know what that meant. I was very focused on making my own music. Like I had a couple different rock bands that I was working in, and the natural progression was to go to music school. So I went to Berklee School of Music with one mission, which was to leave after 4 years with the ultimate rock band ever, which is, you're smiling because it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous because my worldview was like this big. I discovered right away when I got to Berklee that I do not like performing. I actually hated performing. I only want to do it every once in a while when it's like a novelty to me. Most of the time, I really want to work on projects or the process, or making little sculptures of music that you can put on a shelf and like pets that they're nice and perfect, you know. Like that's where I really enjoy myself. I really like digging through a mix and getting into why we put in the instruments, how we did it, and what made it like end up really resonating with a person really well. So at the same time, while I'm at Berklee, I'm getting introduced to a bunch of different factions and areas of music that I would have otherwise never seen before. Music education for one of them, music, the technical side of music, like the engineering and the synthesis side, which I had no idea about beforehand, orchestration, and as well as even like music therapy stuff. Like there's a
Yeah.
whole realm of music therapy that doesn't just end in like the hospice care style of music therapy. Like there's a lot of kind of psychoacoustics that go into it that are very interesting. Anyways, right out of college, I started working with music tech and music education companies that led to Game Tank, which led to Rocksmith, which eventually led to my career in video games. So it's not really a linear path. It's very bizarre. And I think the big thing was when I started and like went to school and started picking up an instrument, my understanding of the world of music was seen through, 6 strings. It's pretty limiting, right? Like we have 10 fingers. Like you should already be alerted to that there might be a problem there. And there might be more in the world of polyphony than you could possibly provide. And yeah, like it's just that the whole experience, and even like through working at Ubisoft and working in video games in general, just understanding how much more there is to music in literally everyone's life than people actually realize at first.
Sure. I do want to. I want to go back a little bit, if you don't mind talking about it. What was it, and roughly when in your Berklee career did you realize performance isn't for me? Like, was there a specific instance that made you sort of realize, like, what? Maybe this isn't what I want to do? Like,
yeah. Well, that would be the crippling anxiety every time I stepped on a stage, telling me that.
Yeah. Did you get the was it not limbic acid? Did your arms tense up and cramp up? Because that's what I had. Yeah. That's always fun.
I actually forgot about that. Thanks for
sorry.
No, but I think like when I was performing in high school, and even like at the beginning of college and stuff, like it was very much under situations that I controlled and situations that made a lot of sense, right? It's like, I'm a rock band, I'm playing at a rock venue, I've been told that I can be here, like people are coming here to see rock music, all of this lines up, it's fitting in a format that I understand. But when I went to music school and started really understanding like what it means to be a performer, and like maybe you're not performing your own songs, maybe you're outside of your realm, maybe you need to grow in this way or that way, and like seeing all of the applications of like the responsibilities that a performer has to an audience, I just realized like, oh, I don't want to be doing this. Sure. Like it's definitely fun and it's definitely stuff that I want to grow into, but like I don't want to be in an improv troupe. I mean, it might be good for me, but like I don't want to, like,
maybe go to the rehearsals, practice improv, don't get on stage and perform the improv. Have that skill set. If there's a place
like that, let me know. But
sure.
But yeah, no, I ended up finding, and it's not like any one thing is completely off the table for literally anyone, but when I got there, I realized like, oh man, I super care about all of the electronic processes and concepts that go into making a synthesizer go. Like before that, I thought synthesizers, which I'm surrounded by at this moment because I have an obsession buying stuff off Reverb, apparently, that I need help for, possibly.
But I have a question for you later.
Yeah, I have a question for you about analog synths later. No, but before that, I thought like, oh, like synthesizers are cheating. You just press one button and it does all the stuff. It's like, no, that may even be true that you're pressing one button, but they made the thing that went into that one button, by the way. And especially like when you break apart what goes into like analog synthesis, which is like the basis of, what goes into a guitar too, when you're thinking of the pickups and all of the pedals and all of that, like, no, there is a lot of system and design and reasons behind why people did all the things that they did, and then how the artist took the things that they did and then used them to their advantage in one way or another. There's a huge, huge, huge process that anyone can be a part of, just as long as they choose to put their focus and their time in there. And it's a lot more, that was a lot more accessible to me than more of a performance route. For a lot of my friends, performance was much more of an accessible route to them. And they looked at the tech side of it and they're like, can you just give me the thing that works? I'm like, cool. Yes, I can.
yeah. I can. That's great. So you're out of school. What happens next?
Yeah, hopefully, unless this is a horrible dream.
No. So between Berklee and the startup, like, what was So how did your sort of career in and around music from school, how did that sort of take off?
Sure. Yeah. So I after school, I started looking at music tech companies. I was particularly versed in this programming language, or in this program called Max MSP, which for those of you out there, it is Max MSP and Jitter. I think now they're on like Max 8. A great group of people. They hired me because of the work that I did in school, because they thought it was cool enough. So I worked with them for a while, and that kind of kickstarted me into working for a bunch of other kind of music tech companies from there. Also did some composing for film, also did composing for commercials and stuff like that. But it just eventually, actually, the weirdest part, the 2008 recession. Do you remember that? Are we
I
old
do.
enough? Everyone's old enough here? Okay.
Yeah. Everybody on this call, at least.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Housing crisis, 2008 recession. The economy was gone. You know, it was like in the very, very low. And no one was hiring musicians, weirdly enough. And I was out of work for like 3 months. And I had a bunch saved up. Like we were doing. I was doing well before that. But, you know, I was mostly doing contract work, and I was out of work for 3 months, and I see this ad come up on Craigslist for transcribing guitar for $10 an hour. I thought, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I can't have come all this way to just like, and $10 an hour in San Francisco, you guys, is not a living wage by any way, shape, or form. And like really like transcription work is very, very labor intensive. And there's a lot of skilled labor that goes into that. And $10 an hour is not what you should be paying for that. So I turned it down, and I said, no, I'm not doing that. Not responding to that. 3 more weeks went by, and I still didn't have a job. And the transcript, it came up again, and I'm like, fine. And I sent my resume to it, didn't think about it, like didn't even make a cover letter or anything. And then I got a call back from the guy who owned Game Tank, Jake Parks. And he was like, you seem like you're a musician, and you're the only person that responded. And I want to make this game that uses a real guitar and is like, and like teaches you how to play guitar, but I don't know anything about music. I'm like, well, this is much more interesting. I can totally help you with this. This isn't transcribing for $10 an hour. You just didn't want to spill the beans of what you're doing on Craigslist, which is not a bad idea to avoid.
Yeah, sure.
And that ended up turning into Rocksmith and turning into Ubisoft. So it's a real, like, you know, Phoenix from the ashes story, kind of.
Sure.
Of me just waiting around without a job, looking on Craigslist every day.
Well, thank you, Nick, for answering that Craigslist ad. I think I speak for a lot of us when I say that. So now you're in the studio, Ubisoft San Francisco. We're going to move straight to sort of now. Your role as an audio director, were you also at some point an audio designer, or have you had experience in that role?
Yeah, so I started. Ubisoft San Francisco used to be a lot smaller, right? It used to be just 4 people big when it started with Rocksmith. Rocksmith was the game that kicked it off. So I've done all of the jobs up the rank.
Yeah.
I mean, on Rocksmith, I was all the jobs at once, but I did because we didn't have a lot of people at first. But you know, definitely moved up the rank through all of them, and have kind of touched every piece of it, which is pretty cool.
So what does your role currently entail? If you can give us just the single paragraph rundown of it, not to minimize what you do, but we are on a time limit.
That's fine. Yeah, tell me when to stop. Yeah, so I'm the audio director for the studio now, which means that I am basically running the whole audio department. And so that's everything from creating the sound, implementing the sound, working in the background of the engine to make sure the sound works. By the way, 90% of what you do, if you are in audio and video games, 90% of what you do is just making the sound work or setting up the system or convincing people that you need to have the system so that you can make the sound work the way you want, right? Like, let's say you have this like super awesome character with this huge sword, and they swing the sword, and then a second later the whoosh plays. You failed. It doesn't matter how cool that whoosh is. And often it sounds like, oh, just line that up. It's like, well, no, because what if they have a different sword of equipped, or what if it's a fire sword, or what if somebody attacked you mid mid swing of the sword. Like there's all of these simulation examples that you need to account for. And it's totally counterintuitive because you're playing a game and you're like, oh man, why didn't they just put in a better sound for that? It's like you had no idea what they had to get through to maybe just get the sound on screen in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, managing the team that covers all those things. Yeah.
Okay. So when you are working, even when you're not working explicitly with music, which I do want to get to very soon, but when you're working with sound effects or other sounds, how much of your background as a musician do you draw from, or is that an entirely separate skill set?
Oh, it's not a separate skill set. Personally for me, everything that I do comes out of music. Like the sound design that I do comes out of music. Obviously the music I do comes out of music. The way of my thought process and thinking about things and the way that I tell stories and structure stuff, honestly, like my mindset comes out of music, because that's where my strength is. That's where I've literally poured 23 years of my life into that. I have other people on my team that are in the audio world and even make music and don't play an instrument. I have one person on my team, Tyler Purcell. He's awesome, fantastic musician, only uses electronics. And he's kind of like a mad scientist. Like his like little home office situation is a crazy mad scientist array of a bunch of equipment that he bangs together to make music.
The textures that guy can pull off, are beautiful, I will say.
I have other people that I've worked with who don't make music at all, that only focus on sound, and they're like, they're kind of like old school sound designers, where it's like, oh, we need bat wings. Well, that's thin leather gloves slapped around like this, to a condenser microphone at this distance. It's like, okay, that's a way to do that, I guess.
Let's talk about making music.
Sure.
In the realm of video games. So the way, my understanding, even though I'm in the studio, I don't work with the audio team directly, which you would probably know if I did. I sort of generally assume you'll have songs, you'll have music that is meant for specific times and locations, and then you have I hate to call it background music, but the sort of ambient.
Right. What your question said, songs versus soundscapes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's really about what you're getting to is like what is the function of what music does.
Yes.
Right. So
why do we have the songs or the soundscapes when we do?
Yeah.
What purpose?
I like to talk about function in general because it ends up showing people that they like way more music than they say that they like. For example, you go to watch a Marvel movie and you're like, oh, that movie was so good. Yeah, well, take out the music. And then suddenly you're like, oh, I didn't know that I super liked orchestral music. Yes, you definitely do. The reason why that standard orchestral setup is the way that it is because the sounds of those instruments are hardwired to our connotations of what it means for those certain emotions to pop up, right? Culturally, we've been told that a soft piano is really soulful and sad. We've been told that like French horns are very heroic. We've been told that a xylophone is when things are getting crazy.
There's I guess there's
oh, it's very barbarian.
Right.
So speaking to function, and that's just a little way of saying a little mind nugget of saying hey, music does a lot more for you than you probably knew that it did, right? So when you're talking about songs versus soundscapes in general, I look at a song as something that stands alone, has a beginning, middle, and end, maybe has lyrics, maybe doesn't, but it has a voice. It's taking your attention into account and it's trying to communicate something. It's trying to tell you a story, right? Whereas a soundscape is more, would call it a film score or a score or something like that, is something that I believe is connected to another piece of media. That doesn't mean it's subservient or anything like that. It doesn't mean it's less good. I'm saying the full story, if you want to hear it, is connected with it.
Sure.
So for that, a great example of a soundscape, Red Dead or any of these open world games, I love the music in those games. I'm also not going to go get in my car and cue them up on Spotify.
Sure. But in that moment, you recognize how much they heighten the experience. So yeah, when you're designing music, when you're composing the soundscapes, like how much material do you need to come up with? And I know that it's going to vary wildly depending on the sort of the openness of the game. But you know, how many options do you need to have per, I hate to call it level, but per area, per scene, per set? Or do you tend to have...
You're kind of getting into the question of like, how much do you need before it becomes fatiguing?
Before it becomes fatiguing, yeah.
It's again, like, if you're going to talk about making music for a game, knowing the function of what you're doing is super important. So like what I try to do before I start working with any composer or before I start working on something myself is really, really understand the flow of the game, really understand where the peak points are supposed to be, to the point where I'm actually making literal charts and graphs and PowerPoint presentations to map out shapes for the composers of like where the moments need to be, because that's the most helpful thing. That tells them exactly what they need to know as far as like the function of what it's supposed to do. From there, like that helps you hit those targets, right? And from there, you can kind of design around fatigue, right? So let's say you're in a matchmaking screen or something where you know you're going to be there for a long time, like Overwatch. You know, you're hanging out in the Overwatch room waiting to like get connected to a game, right?
Yeah.
Notice they don't blast you with the music there. You kind of don't need to hear that.
Right.
It can kind of be really low. Like, and in fact, like if you listen really close, there's still like a there's something like ticking along, but it's like negative 48 dB or something crazy low. Whereas when the match kicks off, it's like go, you know, like it gets you in the mood to actually do the thing that you're doing.
Right. And it cues you mentally to say, okay, now it's go time. And now I gotta get serious. I gotta pay attention to what's going on here.
As far as directing composers of what you want, understanding the function is really important, because knowing if there's like, hey, this section's like this, it's kind of like mezzo piano dynamic, and you're just kind of going to chill here. You're just going to hang out here. There's nothing urgent, you know, and it's going to loop for a little while. So make it long so that we're not hearing the same thing. Or no, this actually, you only have 10 seconds. And in these 10 seconds, you have to communicate this thing is running out of time. You know, think of the Sonic the Hedgehog underwater running out of air. Like, like that. It's like you couldn't swap a different function of music in there and have that work, right?
So if you're in a situation, if you're in a game where maybe it's not necessarily timed, but the music does need to change when events come up, how do you work out? Is that where your Excel charts come up, where you say, okay, this is going to be the normal music, but if this event happens or that event happens or this event happens, it's going to need to shift? How do you handle those transitions?
Right. Yeah. So again, it depends a lot on the context. But like, let's say, I mean, a classic example is you have an open world game and you're just walking around scouting and everything's fine. Maybe you're foraging, and then you end up getting in a fight, right? With like a group of people, and then you're in the fight, and then the last person you kill, it's back to the chill music, you know? That's a matter of just saying like, okay, well, we have our open world exploratory music, and then we have music that is a fight music, and then here's a transition piece that'll get you from here to here. And what triggers this transition? Well, in the game, you're sighted by enemies, and so that sends a trigger to our audio engine, and then that will flick it over in beat so that things aren't crazy. And then the last enemy within this radius is dead, so send the trigger to go back to normal, and then it'll go, you know,
and again,
then you're back to
synced in beat, which I think is probably the key thing that people maybe not, that I might not have considered. Just having those,
It depends on the aesthetic. You could just be like really like just cut in and be in your face about it, but it's easier. It's much smoother to put it in key. If it's an open or in beat, I mean, if it's an open world game, you want things to like flow from the next thing to the next thing like pretty smoothly. You'll also notice like you'll run into bugs where it's like, why is there still fight music? And then like you go in like the last house and you're like, oh my god, you've been alive here this whole time. And then it's like the fight music ends and it's like mission complete. It's like, yeah, god.
So who are you in the studio? What departments are you most working with? Who are you most often collaborating with outside of the audio team?
So the thing is, almost everything requires like audio implementation. So it's kind of everybody, which is overwhelming to keep track of all the things. The way that I like to do it is dividing up the ownership of what people are in charge of. So like, hey, you're 100% on environments, or you're 100% on the music implementation, or you're 100% on this. So one, I don't have to worry about it, which is super great.
Yeah.
But two, then that person is actualized to say, I'm putting sound in this environment, and then sometimes this bench is here and sometimes it's not. And like, you might be able to sit on the bench, but if you sit on the bench sound, we don't have the right, ambience for it or whatever. And so they're actualized to then go talk to animation, or to go talk to design, or go to talk to the people who are doing the set levels. Like, because it really does end up touching everything. Because if you want to have a presentation that makes sense, if you want to have anything on screen that really like catches your attention and tells you a story and makes sense, you need like at least freaking 3 things to happen at the same time, right? Like, especially if it's like in the forefront, you need a visual thing, you need a visual aspect of it, and that can have a range to it too. You need an audio aspect, and then if the controller vibrates, great. Or if a character says like, you really should do that thing, or if it blinked again,
Right.
Yeah, like often people will say, oh, I don't know, like that timer doesn't sound like it's a timer for some reason. It doesn't sound like the sound is connected to the timer. It's like, yeah, the problem is when it gets down to 3, 2, 1, it needs to like pop on the screen, there's no number, or the number's way down here, or the number doesn't light up. There's nothing that tells your brain, hey, that sound you heard is connected to that thing you heard, which is connected to the vibration in the controller, which means that it's probably real.
Is the vibration in the controller? Is the vibration in the controller part of your realm?
So actually, the program that we use, Audio Kinetics Wise, has vibration stuff built into it.
Okay.
And we can actually trigger stuff from audio, which is really cool. It doesn't have to be that way. Other teams don't necessarily do that. But even if it's not, what I'm saying is it's 3 things. Even if it's not, like you can only be subtle if you want to try to sell other stuff, right? Like, let's say it's like, well, they're in this open world and they're in the forest and there's trees. Like, you could put bird sounds in the ambience and probably get away with people feeling like there's bird sounds in there, because you don't always see the birds, but you hear birds, But if you're like, well, this is some weird scenario where we're in Antarctica and we need to hear sharks off in the distance, but it's like that's not going to work as well, Like,
right.
we better see the sharks too.
Right. Because what does a lone shark swimming sound like?
It becomes this game of like what you can convince your brain to believe. And you can convince your brain to believe that hoofbeats belong to horses. If you're trying to show off a zebra, you better match all 3 of those together, and it better be in the center of the screen.
Right. So licensed music in video games, do you have any relationship with that, or is that a completely different
Oh no, for sure.
team? Okay. So when you are dealing with licensed music, I assume that comes in pretty late in the process, or would I be mistaken there?
It depends. With Rocksmith, it comes in first, right?
Yeah, true. We are the exception.
Right, yeah. In a lot of ways, yeah.
Yeah. In a more traditional video game, if you have a cutscene or an intro that has licensed music, are you making those decisions? How many options do you have to sort of have on hand if you're unable to get licensing for the one song that you think would work really well here?
Right. Yeah. It kind of depends. When you're using a licensed song, really you're using it for like the function that it gives, right? And that function can be like it's a lot more flexible than you think. So like if we take the Rocksmith example, right? The song that you're licensing is the lesson plan. Like, that's a very interesting way to use a licensed piece of music. If you're thinking about like what we did with South Park, it's more of a societal reference, right? The licensed song is the joke. Like,
right.
excuse me, it's very important for you to understand that song and the importance of it and where it came from, for you to be like, oh, no way, it's that one, you know, like you don't even need to play the whole thing. In the example of like a trailer, trailers love to grab songs because songs are great at telling stories, and a trailer is trying to tell a story. So by piggybacking on a song, possibly editing it down so it like the beginning and the end happen at the same time, and like the good chorus is only for like a second, tells a story of the game. And like what you grab might do the whole thing. Like if you're doing a trailer, I really think you need to have the song you want to use in mind ahead of time. And
Sure.
for there, it's like it is a matter of like, well, how much do you want to spend, and how much what can you get, and you know, you can't get that, let's get that, you know. It definitely does matter. But something about like licensed music too, is at least what I try to do is I very much try to make the song that we license that ends up in the trailer, or that ends up in any promotional material, or maybe in the cutscene or something like that, that it relates back to what the game is trying to say from a tone, kind of sound, vibe perspective, right? Even if it is to juxtapose it and be like, whoa, something totally different, you know, like, but there should be a connection to it always. Like, and that's a hard thing to do because you can't always control what the licensed song is, but it's important that those things are related, because people definitely have a feeling with how they perceive those licensed tracks, kind of probably before they even get to your game, or when they're first booting up the game. So what I'm saying is it's an impression that you want to cultivate in the same direction with what's going on. Otherwise, you don't want to sell people a false bill of goods. Is that a thing? False bill of goods? Yeah. Bill of false goods? Which one of the thing?
I think it's the first one. But I get what you're saying. Either way.
Snake oil. You don't want to sell them snake
oil. Yeah.
The song you put, you don't want to be like, yeah, this is going to make the game look way better than it is. I put in this sweet song. You want it to be like, no, the song that we put in resonates with the cool game that you're going to be playing.
Right. So if somebody wants to get into the audio world, and they have an interest in music, and that could be for video games, film, television, what have you, what would you say is the necessary background, like the minimum knowledge base that they would need to have in order to get into audio design, audio production, that sort of role?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's like a minimum background. I happened to go to school because when I was younger, I certainly lacked discipline and needed formalized school. And my parents telling me, no, just finish it. Just keep going. I understand you have a lot of self-doubts. Just keep doing it. Something will be good on the other side. You know,
okay.
Like,
yeah.
As I'm sure everybody or people have had when they've been in school, they're like, do I really want to do this major? Am I really doing this stuff? Like for me, that ended up working out. I will say you definitely don't need that. The world is filled with information and it's just a matter of going to find it. And really the only difference between someone you see, the only difference that should be between someone that you see doing the thing that you want to do and you is really just time and focus. How much time have you dedicated to it, and how much focus have you dedicated to it with that time?
So it's not a background. It's just it's dedication. Yeah,
no, for sure. Like, I mean, as far as like if we're talking about getting the job, it's an ability to demonstrate that, right? If if I don't even care if you haven't gone to high school, if you have a bunch of really dope, awesome examples and have put a lot of time into it and have like worked in the field before and have a lot of great examples of your work, like fantastic. Like greatness can come from anywhere. It's just a matter of time and focus. And like we have these institutions to help us get to those places. And if it's helpful for you, go for it. I definitely recommend doing it because it's definitely an easier path to get there. But I'm trying to like, I'm saying that like it can come from anywhere. I've definitely worked with people that have not had college degrees before, and they're just the stuff that they've done, the amount of time and focus that they put into it has been such a huge amount that they're like clearly know what they're talking about. They clearly know what they're doing, and they clearly have experience doing it. You know, not every guitar player needs to go to music school to be an awesome guitar player. In fact, there are tons that have not.
Yeah.
but at the same time, like, don't reject education, right? Like there's a classic guitar player thing that you'll hear when you're starting out, where people are. It usually comes from a place of being overwhelmed of having to learn a bunch, you know, and it's like, well, I
Yeah.
don't want to learn a lot of music theory because I don't want it to like change how I'm gonna write music, or like I don't want you're like, I want
Right.
to like
Right.
super be creative and find my own stuff. It's like, yeah, no, or like these are just tools. You're like wanting to build a house, but without using any hammers or saws. Like, it's
Right.
okay, dude. Use hammers and saws. And if you think those hammers and saws suck, make your own awesome chain hammer saw. I think
Yeah.
that would be great. And if
Right.
it
But
helps you build your own specific houses, like at the end of the day, that's all we want.
yeah, it's like the idea of like learning the rules so that you can break them more effectively.
Yeah, or just
Yeah.
using them.
Or just
You
using
know?
or just using rules because people. I mean,
Or
yeah.
just using. Sometimes you need to make a song, and you're like, you know what? As much as it pains me, 1-4-5 as a progression for the song just works. And we put an accordion on it. I like that accordion.
Yeah.
Now it sounds different and cool. And I wrote lyrics about how she broke up with me, and now we're done.
Yeah. Dare we have a chorus? Dare we have a chorus?
Yeah. Does the
One.
song need a chorus? Every song has a chorus.
Uh,
Yeah.
One last question for me before I
Sure.
hit a couple from the chat.
Mhm.
What challenges in your role excite you?
Mhm.
What are the problems that come up that you're like, I can't wait to figure this one out. I can't wait to fix this.
Oh man. It's I'm gonna speak from just a musical process, just in general, because like lately that's been something that's very much in my mind, and I think like this audience will care a lot about the music side of it. But
Yeah.
the feeling, the reason why I keep making music, and the feeling that I go for is that feeling when I'm making it and I'm done and I'm like, oh man, I really like the thing that I did. I feel like it works. I feel like it fits what it needs to do, and it's just like that reward of I spent a lot of time doing it and it worked out and it's great and it's fantastic and like people like it. Yay, people like it, you know? I would say everything else before that is the awful zone.
Oh.
And like it's good to remind yourself this. Like it doesn't matter how long you've been playing music. It doesn't matter how many albums you've made or how famous you are. When you start making a new song, it is a humbling process because it reminds you that you are terrible.
Right.
It's a matter of just like any new song you start to make, you're like, oh my God, can I even do this? Have I ever been a musician? How have I tricked these people for all this time? It's like you get imposter syndrome
Yeah.
because it's a matter of, oh, the end results that I have like said like, oh, I can do this. Yeah, those are like 5-6 days of straight being up to 4 a.m. mixing and making the song, right? And when you
Yeah.
start and you're on minute 3, yeah, I know that's gonna be kind of bad. And like you're gonna have something you like, and then you're gonna like listen to it again and be like, I'm terrible. Then you're gonna put some more into it, show a friend, they'll be like, that's really cool, but this sucks. And then you're gonna do this like back and forth until you end up with something that is carved out of stone. That's really great. But that process is really, really, really hard and really painful. And I feel like being a successful musician is about coming up with a way or formula where at the end of the day, you're in a net positive of how you feel about the things that you've made.
Yeah.
Long
Yeah.
ago, before I ever started working at Ubisoft, I made an album with 8 songs over the course of 4 years. So that was half a year a song.
Yeah.
The album was 30 minutes long. And at the time, it was like the most scrutinous, like every single volume curve was exactly perfect in my mind. So like I have such a net negative debt of bad feelings from that, just because of the
Right.
diminishing returns and the amount of work that I put in. And also too, I listen to it now, I'm like, oh, I would have done that really differently. It's just like, it's good that I put in the time, but it's something to be
Right.
said for like, do the thing, spend your time doing it, enjoy the process, move past it. Because eventually that's how you grow. You don't grow from grinding on the same thing for 4 years.
Right. Right.
I mean, I did, but like not, you're not going to feel good at the end of that. I also
Right.
redid each of those songs like 4 or 5 times. So doesn't matter.
So you got really good at each of those songs. but it didn't necessarily translate
I
out
think I just
as
meant
much.
like an escape velocity exit window.
Yeah. Questions from the chat. Tonal Theo wants to know, how much time did you spend with session mode?
Oh, too much.
Too-
I spent a
Speaking of
lot.
which,
So session mode was not just me. Session mode was, we had a team of we called them audio composers, because they had a very weird role. They were people that were like the note trackers in that they were very skilled with their various instruments that they were writing for, but they were writing it in MIDI that could be transposed and kind of scaled to any key, any tempo. So like they were basically writing like motifs and rhythms that could be moved around. It was very interesting, and especially with the guitar stuff, because with the guitar, in order for it to sound realistic, they had many different layers of noises and kind of techniques. I mean, you guys know all the techniques from Rocksmith, right? We had layers for
yeah,
every single one of those. So they were composing riffs that had like a lot of like kind of noise stuff to it to convince you that it was a real instrument. So they
yeah,
had a really weird job. I could not have done it without them. But definitely we definitely grinded. It was a machine. We definitely grinded to get out all the stuff that we wanted
right.
to do for session mode. I think session mode was like largely, I remember it being largely done like a good amount of time before release. Like it wasn't like we were cramming last
Oh, okay.
minute. We really did schedule it back. Like it was one of those times where it's like, wow, we planned and it worked. We had the recording dates where we were supposed to. We edited
Yeah.
this stuff on time. We hired the right people. They worked for the right amount of time. Like it really did. It really did line up. I think it was like at the end of the day, like a year and a half.
Okay.
There was a lot of development that happened beforehand with Audio Kinetic wise. Yes, shout out to Simon Ashby for dealing with all my ridiculous requests. But there was a lot of stuff that we needed built into Wise that wasn't there before. Like Wise didn't accept MIDI before. Wise didn't have it didn't have like a sampler architecture
Yeah.
before. It didn't have there were a bunch of other things it didn't have like sync to, there was other certain technical things that it was missing to be able to do this, let alone like build the whole thing in there. Oh, it has like synthesizer elements now that it didn't have before. So they had to build a lot of stuff for us, which is really cool.
Okay. Cool. I think it's about a quarter till.
Okay.
So I think
Yeah.
I've chewed. We've. I think I chewed up most of the chat Q&A time. But this has been great. Thank you so much for coming here and talking about what you do. Really appreciate you, and hopefully you'll be back on stream again at some point. We can keep talking about music. That'd be great.
Yeah, if you need me back, let me know. I would love it.
I will. Will do.
All right.
Thank you very much, Nick. And now it is time for our first giveaway of the stream. So if you check your screen, and listen to You Be Yebble, you'll have a chance to win everything that you see on your screen. You're going to get if you win, you're going to get 2 sets of guitar strings from Ernie Ball. That is a 6-string set for your guitar, a 4-string set for your bass. You're going to get a dozen picks from Ernie Ball, 3 Spectrum Plectrum picks from us here at Rocksmith. You're going to get a black Ernie Ball guitar strap, a package of Wonder Wipes, and a peg winder. All of that can be yours. Once again, we'll be shipping these out once I can get back to the studio. The first round is still going out when I was able to go back recently. This next drop will come out when I'm able to get back in there. And we do ship internationally, so if you are not in the U.S., please make sure you split up your address line by line. If you are the winner, you'll get a whisper from UBL to get your name, your shipping address, and your telephone number. We do need all of that information in order to get your prize to you. So good luck. And right now, we are going to go to our first performance of the day, which is from me and Dan Amrich. The two of us, well, I'll tell you here in a second, but the two of us spent some time working out what songs we wanted to perform. And I hope you'll be pleased with the results. After that, you're going to hear from Sam Schwartz and then back to live after that. So here is me and Dan. Hello again. It's me, Doug, from the past. I'm here with my prop dog, Lucida. Lucida says hello. This is her way of saying hello. you're about to hear a couple songs that Dan and I collaborated on. We wanted to kind of figure out where our musical interests and skills sort of met up, and it was fun exploring sort of like try this, try that, and see where we both lined up. So the first of those two songs is my pick, which is "Straight On" by Heart. It is one of my favorite bass lines in the Rocksmith library. It's this weird disco rock thing that really leans into all the minor thirds that it has, and it's got some really fun lines in there. Just a lot of like pushing, a lot of driving while playing around with those slides. Very percussive at times, but very loose in others. It goes all over the place. I love it. So here it is. This is Heart with "Straight On."
All right, masterful performance.
Hello, Rocksmith fans. My name is Sam Schwartz. I've been working with the Rocksmith team for about 7 years now, and I wanted to break down how we use bends in the pentatonic scale. A lot of times we, as guitar players, we tend to bend just a few notes that we think are really easy to get to, right? So there's just a few that we tend to go to, our norms, right? And then there's a couple of notes that are in the pentatonic scale that we don't typically tend to bend, like the root and the fifth. And I wanted to talk about contexts where we could use some of those. So let's get started. Hello, folks. It's me. It's me again.
It's me. Hello, 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 Sam, your best friend.
Okay. So we're going to take the A minor pentatonic scale and just play it, just so we can get our hands around what we're talking about here. Just to wrap our heads around what's going on. So here's the red string, the lowest string on your guitar. So this is from low to high. This is going to be 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5, 8. Okay. All right, so now that we have kind of an idea of where the pentatonic scale is on the guitar, let's talk a little bit about where we tend to bend as guitar players, right? So we're gonna go here, and that's definitely one that we do on the 7th fret of your G string or of the orange string here, if you're a Rocksmith player, like Rocksmith notation. Right? We get that a lot. And then we also tend to bend on the 8th fret of the B string or the green string here. Right? And then we also tend to bend a lot on the purple string on the 8th fret. So those are 3 places where we tend to bend a lot as guitar players. I want to talk a little bit about the notes that we tend not to bend, and how we can maybe incorporate some of those. So let's talk about the ones that we usually don't bend. Okay, so notes that we usually don't bend tend to be the root and the fifth, right? That we can that we see happening a lot with guitar players. So a lot of times you don't hear this note bend when we're doing. Kind of hard to make that one work. So let's talk about how we make that one and the next one, the root, work. So let's talk about the root too. Kind of funky, right? So what I'm going to do actually for this particular, for these particular notes is I'm going to take those notes and I'm going to slide them up a little bit so I have a little bit more leverage. So it's a little bit weird when you're playing if you're with your first finger. So what I tend to do is if I'm going to bend that fifth in the scale, I actually play it 2 frets up. So I'm going to play it like this. And then right here, I'm going to slide up. And then I get a little bit more leverage because that G string is a little bit further up the neck, so I can bend it a little bit easier, right? And then I'm going to do a similar thing with the root and show you how to do that. Cool? So now I'm going to do a couple of licks with those. So watch. Right? Really cool sound. So you can bend that fifth up and it just sounds real nice and juicy right there. Cool. And then we can do the same thing with the root. Super killer. Ugh! So practice those as a way to incorporate some of that juiciness into your playing. And then I'm going to play over a backing track and show you kind of how you can integrate all that stuff into your playing. Rocksmith fans, thanks so much for watching. I really hope you got something out of that little lesson video, and I'll see you next time. All right.
And welcome back to the live portion of today's Rocksmith Developer Stream. I am still your host and community developer, Doug Lilly. Wanted to answer one quick question that we had in the chat way earlier in the stream. That came from Robotic Pro. I answered it in the chat, but I figured I'd address it here. Asking about exercises for the hand and fingers to avoid injury. One of our early Encore streams featuring Brian Shu discussed exercises, things you can do to prep your hands, to prep yourself physically for playing guitar. So look in our Encore. If I can get the link to that, I will get that to you soon. Squirrely Ninja might be on that. I'm not sure. But yeah, I'll try to get that link to that video to you as soon as possible. Right now, though, we have another giveaway. So if you follow along to UBUbble in the chat, you can win one of 5 copies of the Clio song pack on Steam. That song pack includes All the Pretty Girls, No Good, and Way Down We Go. Some nice blues rock. Speaking of blues, that can be yours if you were a lucky winner. So again, please pay attention to what UBUbble is saying in the chat. That is Josh. He's covering for UB Jurassic today, who will be back very soon. And speaking of being back very soon, it is time for our final performance with Dan Amrich and myself. This is Dan's pick, and I will let him take it away. Here's Dan.
Hey gang, I'm Dan Amrich. Nice to see you. I used to be the community developer. Doug and I are playing Back to the Future this week as community developers past and present come together to play you the songs this week. The song that I chose that Doug agreed to was Harder to Breathe by Maroon 5. In Doug's words, it's a bop. I don't even remember why I started playing this song. I do know that I didn't really appreciate it until I started playing it in Rocksmith 2014. But what I love is that James Valentine, the guitarist from Maroon 5, who does not get enough credit for playing tastefully and serving the song, he is using really cool bar chord shapes here, and he's changing them as he shifts between the 4 main chords of the chorus riff. It actually turned out to be very tricky for me to learn how to play. It required me to get some of that independent finger motion going, where I had to like remove one of the fingers from the chord, strum it once, and then quickly change over to a different chord form. So it did give me some trouble for a while, but I'm really happy with it overall. I can do about 95%, and it's got a really nice funky groove to it, a really mild funky groove, but it's a really good groove song. So I hope to hear Doug get into the groove on bass. I'm going to do rhythm guitar on my on the Amrich Cabernita, the purple guitar that I recently built, and so I hope you enjoy it too. And if you have not considered this song, consider it. It's a bop.
Dare you say that my behavior is unacceptable? Some condescending, unnecessary have the tendency of getting very physical. So watch your step, cause if I do, you need a miracle. Dream of dying, make me wonder why I'm even here. Double vision, I was seeing this thing. Want to stay, but you know, baby, where I want to go. Pick the tread the path I am walking on. The rabbit is cold outside, and I know I'm alone. The love is not on me when you say that I won't give up. The love of the clouds on the face of my
Masterful performance. Flawless performance.
As promised, a bop. Doug was absolutely right. A real quick thank you from me to Doug for letting me play this week, and to you for indulging the musical choice. Also to you for being such a fantastic and positive community. I don't get the chance to say it anymore because I'm not the community developer, but the Rocksmith community is hands down the best community I've ever seen. And I have worked with other communities, and they were nowhere near as positive and supportive, and just a joy to be there with every day. So thank you for continuing to encourage other people to learn how to play guitar and to be the kind of musicians they want to be. If you are looking for some free music, I have free music at HeroFalls.com. That's my current solo project. There's also a lot of free music at PaletteswapNinja.com, which is my project of parodies with my friend Jude Kelly. We have all of our stuff for free there. I have all of my stuff for free on Bandcamp, but that's all linked from HeroFalls.com. Have fun. Thanks again, and keep playing guitar.
And welcome back. We are just about done with today's stream. Once more, I do want to bring up the fact that we are aware of the connectivity issue with Rocksmith Remastered on all platforms. We are working on it, and we will have updates as soon as possible. There should be a link in the chat for the forum where we will post the updates once we have them. Also make sure to check our Twitter feed. We are twitter.com/rocksmithgame. You can also find us on Instagram at that same account, at rocksmithgame, and facebook.com/rocksmith. But the Twitter is where you'll probably find the updates for the issue that we're working on right this moment. Some people are able to work around that by playing offline. So if you have a method of playing not being connected to the internet when you play, that may allow you to get on and play in this moment. So again, our apologies on that. We are working on it, and thank you for your patience in this matter. Want to say thank you very much to Nick Bonardi for hopping on and chatting. That was great for me because I've rarely been able to talk to Nick. So that was nice for me. Thanks to Dan for providing some nice rhythm guitar today, as well as running the board. And thanks to UB Yubble for covering for UB Jurassic. It's always nice to have Josh back. And finally, our last thing. Oh no. Two last things. We will be back again. We are streaming a little bit less frequently right now, and our next stream will be on November 5th. So we'll have more information about that on those social media sites that I mentioned earlier. Right now, we have our last giveaway of the stream. So please, once more, listen to UBL for your chance to win everything that you see upon your screen right now. That's going to be 2 sets of strings from Ernie Ball, a set for your guitar, a set for your 4-string bass, a dozen picks from Ernie Ball, 3 Spectrum Plectrum picks from us here at Rocksmith. You're going to get a black Ernie Ball guitar strap, a package of Ernie Ball Wonder Wipes to keep your guitar's neck, strings, and body looking fresh and playing longer, and a peg winder from Ernie Ball. All that can be yours once I get back to the studio to send them out, which I'll let you know when I'm able to get back in there and send out another shipment of those. Again, if you are international, we do ship outside of the U.S., but when you're contacted by UBL to get your name, shipping address, and telephone number, please be sure to separate your address line by line so that I don't mess it up when getting your prize out to you. And that's our stream for today. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Have a good one.